We have the incredible privilege today to begin the second parak in Mesillas Yesharim. And the title of the parak is Bebeir Midas HaZihirus, an explanation of the midah, the character trait, or the attribute of Zihirus. So remember again, the Ramchal, Moshe Chaim Latzato, modeled his entire sefer of Mesillas Yesharim on the teaching of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair took what we'll call a staged approach to spiritual development and actualization. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair said, step after step, the first step in the process of spiritual actualization is Zihirus. So writes the Ramchal, Hine, Inyan HaZihirus Hushia Adam Nishar B'masu Be'inyanov. Zihirus will translate it as a person has to be aware. Zahir, even in modern Hebrew, means to be careful. Zihirus is the midah of awareness. The midah of awareness. Person has to be aware and vigilant in his actions and in all his life dealings. Kilomar, misponin u'mifakeach al ma'asav u'drachiv hatovim hemulo. On a most basic level, Zihirus means that a person has to give thought and has to have a sense of awareness as to how he's living and what he's doing. Are the actions I'm engaging in and the things that I'm doing, the path that I'm choosing, is it good or not? Livilti azov nafshu l'sakanas avadon chas v'chalila v'lo yelech b'mahalich hergelo ki iver ba'afela. The Ramchal writes, if a person lives without Zihirus, so a person lives without a sense of awareness and care and concern for the decisions that they're making and what they're doing, a person lives life like a blind person in the dark. Now, it's interesting, by the way, why does the Ramchal give the example of a blind person in the dark? In other words, if a person is blind, it doesn't matter if it's light or it's dark. So the commentaries on Mesillas Yesharim write, because when a blind person is in the light, as much as the blind person can't see, others can help the blind person. When a blind person is in the dark, he's blind, and no one else could help him either. When a person lives without Zihirus, a person lives without a sense of vigilant awareness about what I'm doing. Is it good? Is it not good? The decisions I'm making, they're like a blind person in the dark. They can't help themselves, and often they prevent others from helping them as well. The concept of Zihirus, of just living life with a sense of awareness and care and concern, is something that is logical. Because Ramchal says something amazing. I have the ability to make informed decisions in life. I have the ability to make good choices, and I have the ability to avoid bad choices. That's the midah of Zihirus. The midah of Zihirus says, be attentive, be careful, be vigilant, be aware about the decisions you make before you make them. So the Ramchal says, I have the ability to save myself from unnecessary life difficulty and suffering. How can I not avail myself of that opportunity? So this is incredible. The Ramchal says, even animals live with a sense of Zihirus, meaning what? An animal senses danger. And what does an animal do when it senses danger? It runs, right? In other words, there's no such thing as an animal running towards danger. It senses, it runs. He says, Vaholich bolom bi'isbonenos im tov darko im ra. So a person who lives life without Zihirus, without a sense of contemplation, without an awareness, without giving forethought to what it is that he or she is doing before they do it, ultimately, hinehu kisuma. Again, he gives another mashal. It's like a blind person walking on the edge of the river, where there's obviously an acute danger because the blind person could go ahead and drown. So living life without a sense of awareness is like straddling the line between life and death, straddling the line between danger and safety. He goes on, he says, the Ramchal here says something amazing. He says, in life, we often contend with two different types of blindness. Sometimes a person could be actually like physically blind, and sometimes a person could be willfully blind. What's the difference? So again, person's born physically blind. Okay, that's a condition that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has visited upon them. But a person sometimes is willfully blind, meaning I choose not to look at my actions. I choose not to look at how I'm living. I choose not to look at the decisions that I'm making. That's willful blindness. I'm willingly closing my eyes. And ultimately, again, to willfully close my eyes and not be attentive to the decisions I'm making, the way that I'm living, writes to Ramchal, makes me even less than an animal. Even an animal instinctively knows, run from danger. Yet so often I allow myself to be willfully blind to the decisions I'm making, the lifestyles I'm choosing, the derech I'm choosing for myself. Hine, Yirmiyahu misonin al roa b'nei doro, mipnei hayosim negum b'nega ha'midazos. The prophet Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah, chastised his generation because he felt that ultimately, again, they were suffering from a lack of zihirus. Yirmiyahu says they just weren't paying attention. They weren't paying attention. Is this something I should do, something I shouldn't do? Good idea, bad idea. Yirmiyahu said about his generation, people don't think about what they did. And if they make mistakes, they don't contemplate, how could I have committed this mistake? Rather, they just keep running like a horse in war. So again, I don't know much about horses in war, but I guess based on the pasuk, once the horse starts running, it just keeps running. It just takes off. It senses danger, it keeps running. Yirmiyahu says to his generation, you're like a horse in war. You're like a horse in war. You got used to running on a particular path, and you just go. You just keep going, and you never contemplate, and you never think, and you never analyze. And Yirmiyahu says to his generation, you're suffering from willful blindness. It doesn't have to be that way. And it turns out that sometimes a person finds themselves in such a bad place, puts themselves on such a bad derech, and doesn't even realize what it is that they did. So it is here that Ramchal introduces us to this most profound first step, the midah of zihirus. So the midah of zihirus, ultimately, Ramchal explaining to us, means to be aware, to be conscious, to be cognizant, and to be attentive to the decisions I'm making before I make them, to the path I'm choosing before I choose it. And this midah, he says, is found in nature. Animals have it. And to not possess this midah, says the Ramchal, is essentially subjecting myself to a life of willful blindness. We'll stop over here for today. In our next shir, we will continue in Parak Beis. Shkoyach to everyone.